Hello, Fanatics. Welcome to True Crime Storytime with me, Cindy. I thought it would be nice to switch it up a little bit. I thought I'm going to cover a female this week, and I'm used to females being angry or jealous and stabbing their lover, shooting their lover, or, us females are fickle creatures. And I came across this lady who is evil. This True Crime Storytime episode is an enigma. There's a lot of, unresolved issues. She definitely did it, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of unresolved issues as we go along. So, I want to put a disclaimer here before I continue. If you are thinking about having breakfast, lunch, or dinner, can you please come back to this video, because I do not want anyone near food, because the further and further we delve into this case, it gets more and more gruesome. I've decided to leave the details in purely for the effect of this is how I came across this case. I've researched it. I'm seasoned. I listen to a lot of true crime. I get invested in my true crime. And even this one turned my stomach. So, just putting that out there. Also, I am a single mum to 2 teenage boys. And usually they're milling around the house, in their rooms, on the computer, whatever they're doing. I have made sure they are fast asleep. So not to be disturbed or have them over here. Carl's different, he's 19, but it's pretty gross, guys. I just want it noted here before I continue. Do not be thinking about having any food. Let's dive in, shall we? Another side note, this lady is Norwegian. I have trouble pronouncing Bill, Bob and Joe. So I have no hope with Norwegian names, and a couple of them come up. So I might just tweak it. I know Nettie of Norway on YouTube. She's also in my Facebook group. She's Norwegian. She would be able to cover this case with precision. I, however, am barely English, so please bear with me. Okay, let's begin. Okay, her nickname is Hell's Belle, which you will have seen in the title. Okay, so Belle was born in Selbu, Norway, on November the 11th in 1859. She was the youngest of 8 children. At the age of 14, she began working for neighbouring farms by milking and herding cattle to save enough money for passage to New York. She moved to the United States in 1881. When she was processed by immigration at Castle Garden, she changed her first name to Belle, then travelled to Chicago to join her sister Nellie, who had immigrated several years earlier. In Chicago, while living with her sister and her brother-in-law, she worked as a domestic servant. But then she got a job at a butcher's shop, cutting up animal carcasses until her marriage in 1884. It's important to remember that she worked in a butcher shop. Okay? She was at least 5'7", which is 170 centimetres. Important. And weighed around 95 to 113 kilograms, which is 210 to 250 pounds. Now, I watch wrestling and I'm pretty sure that's on the large side. Just saying. She was physically strong and masculine in appearance. So, Belle married Mads Sorensen in 1884. Sorensen and Belle owned a candy store. That explains the extra pounds, which burned to the ground. The couple's home had also burned to the ground, and both instances granted the couple insurance payouts. 2 babies in their home died from inflammation of the large intestine. Now we're in 1900. I don't know how common the inflammation of large intestines happened, but every time I've come across this case and I look for consistencies in the crossover, each have said that it can result from poisoning, and the mere fact that they've added that on kind of suggests that the children were poisoned, but I'm just going to leave that there for you to make up your own minds. However, the doting mum, Belle, had insured both of the children and collected large insurance checks after each death. Neighbours gossiped about the babies since Belle never appeared to be pregnant. Just a side note here, they owned a candy store. They were obviously figures in a community, and people would have noticed had she been pregnant or suddenly, showing off a baby. The mere fact that they're gossiping is a little bit worrying, because I'm not quite sure if they are her children, or if she acquired the children, or if she even made it up. I don't know. Thoughts down below. Sorensen had purchased life insurance, and just to put this into layman terms, he had a life insurance policy and it was about to expire, and he obviously changed companies or upped the amount or something, but he had 2 life insurance policies for one day. So one was expiring, the other one was kicking in. But on July 30th, 1900, both of the policies were active at the same time. Sorensen died of cerebral hemorrhage on that day, the day where both were active. Now I know what you're thinking. Belle, how cunning are you? On that one day where both policies were active, how could you do it? Well, you're jumping the gun, guys, because Belle has an explanation, okay? He came home with a headache and she provided him with some quinine powder for the pain. And then she later checked on him and dun dun dun, he was dead. Belle collected money from both the expiring life insurance policy and the one that went into effect that day, making a total of $5,000. Now, me being very curious, thought this was 1900, so how far would £5,000 get you? £5,000 in 1900 is the equivalent to about $173,985.71. Needless to say, that £5,000 was a lot of money. With the insurance money, she moved to LaPorte, Indiana, and she bought a pig farm. Now, if I was some kind of true crime fanatic, and I'm no professional by any means, I'm into true crime. Pigs eat anything. I wonder why she bought pigs. Belle married Peter Gunness on the 1st of April 1902. The following week, while Peter was out of the house, his infant daughter died of unknown causes in Belle's care. Peter died 8 months later due to a skull injury. Come on, guys. Belle had nothing to do with it. Peter reached for something on a high shelf and a meat grinder fell on him and smashed his skull. The district coroner, like you, suspected murder but convened a coroner's jury. Nothing came of the case, and Belle collected $3,000 insurance money for Peter's death. Again, $104,391.43. Now, she has collected a minimum just from her husbands, Sorensen and Peter, $8,000. Now, okay, she bought a farm, but did she go quietly and live out the rest of her days as a rich and humble person? No, she did not. Belle began placing marriage ads in Chicago newspapers in 1905. One of her ads was answered by a Wisconsin farmhand, Henry Gerholt. After travelling to LaPorte, Henry wrote to his family saying that he liked the farm, he was in good health, and requested that they send him seed potatoes. Yep, seed potatoes. Okay. When they failed to hear from him after that, they contacted Belle. See, again, you're doing it again. You're thinking she had something to do with it. Henry had gone off with horse traders to Chicago. But he didn't take his trunk and fur overcoat, so Belle kept those. John Moe of Minnesota answered Belle's ad in 1906. After they had corresponded for several months, John travelled to LaPorte and withdrew a large amount of cash. Although no one ever saw John again, a carpenter who did occasional work for Belle observed John's trunk remained in her house along with a dozen others. Her criminal activities came to light in 1908. The farmhouse in LaPorte, Indiana, burned to the ground. In the ruins, authorities found the bodies of a headless adult woman, initially identified as Belle Gunness, and her 3 children. Further investigation unearthed the partial remains of at least 11 additional people on the property. After the fire at the farm, LaPorte police authorities were contacted by Astley, who had found correspondence between his brother Andrew and Belle. The letters included petitions for him to relocate to LaPorte, to bring money and to keep the move a secret. Side note: if you're doing nothing wrong, there is no need to keep it a secret. Just a little bit of life advice out there for anyone who may need it. A visit by Astley to the Gunness farm with a former hired hand led to attention being paid to, quote, soft depressions in what had been made into a pen for hogs. After briefly digging one of the depressions in that lot, a gunny sack was found that contained, quote, 2 hands, 2 feet, and 1 head, which Astley recognised to be those of his brother. I can't even imagine. Immediate inspection of the site revealed that there were dozens of such slumped depressions in the yard. And further digging and investigation at the site yielded multiple burlap sacks containing, quote, torsos and hands, arms hacked from the shoulders down, masses of human bone wrapped in loose flesh from trash-covered depressions that proved to be graves. In each case, the body had been butchered in the same manner. The body decapitated, the arms removed at the shoulders, and the legs severed at the knees. Blunt trauma and gashes characterised the skulls that were found that had been separated from the bodies. She worked in a butcher shop. No one's saying she was great at her job, but she worked at a butcher shop. I mean, not only is she killing people, I can't even comprehend having to cut them up. It takes a special mindset to be able to pull that off and hold your nerve. And wow. Anyway, let's carry on. Lucas Riley, quoting the Chicago Inter-Ocean in Mental Floss, noted that, quote, the bones had been crushed on the ends as though they had been struck with hammers after they were dismembered. Quicklime had been scattered over the faces and stuffed in the ears. After finding the parts of 5 bodies on the first day, an additional 6 on the second, some in shallow graves under the original hog pen, others near an outhouse or a lake. Quote, "The police stopped counting." End quote. With these discoveries, the perceptions of Belle Gunness, as reported in newspapers, descriptions of a praiseworthy woman dying in the fire that consumed her house, quote, "in a desperate attempt to save her children," end quote, were reassessed. Despite the initial success with the identification of Andrew, and despite the fact that widening news coverage of the mass murders invited inquiries from families with men that had gone missing, quote, "most of the remains could not be identified," end quote. Now, I'm just going to move on to the hired hand of Belle Gunness, because his name is Ray Lamphere. And he wasn't just a hired hand, he was her on and off lover. He survived, and I think he may have survived because he was the hired hand and was helping her somehow to dispose of, not possibly kill them, but dispose of. But we will discuss him as we go. In November 1908, Ray, the farmhand, was convicted of arson in connection with the fire. Ray later confessed that Belle had placed advertisements seeking male companionship, only to murder and rob the men who responded and subsequently visit her on the farm. Ray stated that Belle asked him to burn down the farmhouse with her children inside. Ray also asserted that the body thought to be Belle was in fact a murder victim, chosen and planted to mislead investigators. The brother of one victim, who had warned Belle that he might arrive at the farm shortly to investigate his brother's disappearance. According to Ray, this impending visit motivated Belle to destroy her house, fake her own death, and flee. When Ray was arrested, he was wearing John Moe's overcoat and Henry Gerholt's watch. Edward Beachley, a journalist, was given a secret assignment to acquire access to a confession and publish it, bringing a second inconsistent account to light from Ray, the farmhand on-off lover Ray. The second account is based on the report that Ray contacted Reverend Edwin Schnell and provided him with a verbal confession that the Reverend transcribed and had Ray sign. A document that the Reverend kept sealed in his personal safe. Edward, the journalist, attempted to convince the Reverend to publish this later confession, but he was denied by both the Reverend and the Reverend's wife. However, a separate newspaper published a story with speculation regarding the second Ray the farmhand confession. Described as worried as to the peace of the families of the victims, the Reverend offered the confession to Edward, the journalist, which was later published. Edward's narrative, entitled Lamphere's Confession, contained this summary. In the confession, Lamphere said that he had killed Mrs. Gunness and children with an axe, sprinkled the bodies with kerosene and set fire to them and the house. It gave details of the slaying and told his part in the former murders which occurred at the Gunness farm. His task usually being the burying of the bodies in the garden. The essential fact, however, was that the murderess was not alive as a fugitive. The publication of Lamphere's confession resulted in the subsequent arrest of his accomplice, Elizabeth Smart. The inconsistencies between the two confessions, including the matter of survival of Belle Gunness, remain historical issues that are not fully resolved. Belle Gunness was pronounced dead, even though the doctor who performed the post-mortem testified that the headless body was 5 inches shorter and about 50 pounds lighter than Belle. No explanation was provided for what happened to the body's head. Whether Belle died in the fire or escapes remained uncertain, although the sheriff blamed a Chicago American reporter for inventing the, quote, escaped story. Reported sightings of Belle in the Chicago area continued long after she was declared dead. At the time, police looked into reports of women suspected to be Belle, none of which led to her apprehension. In 2008, DNA tests were performed on the headless corpse in an attempt to compare the DNA in the corpse against a sample from a letter that Belle had sent one of her victims, but due to its age, the sample was not able to be properly tested. After Belle's crimes came to light, the Gunness farm became a tourist attraction. Spectators came from across the country to see the mass graves, and concessions and souvenirs were sold. Moreover, the crime became an acknowledged part of area history. The LaPorte County Historical Society Museum has a permanent Belle Gunness exhibit. Wow. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I'm not convinced Belle was in the fire at all. I think she quite possibly had murdered her children, set the farmhouse on fire and fled. I think Ray was very much involved because the police obviously thought so too. But what a puzzle And yeah, it makes sense as well for her to be seen in Chicago because her sister Nellie was there. Although she can't go running to her sister Nellie, because once Nellie found out what she had been doing, Nellie might have called the police herself. Maybe not. Maybe she would have protected her sister. Who knows? I wouldn't. But yeah, a very curious and interesting case, I thought. I don't know where I stand, guys. I'm convinced she did not die in that house fire. She escaped the fire in the candy store. She escaped the fire in her marital home. Yeah, it's just bizarre. Did she have enough money to escape and live on out of all of that $8,000 that she'd had? Who knows? Who knows? As always, please do leave your thoughts and comments down below. I love interacting with you with my true crime. And I think I'll go back to men because women are just as scary, aren't they? And this is going back to the 1900s. I just can't get my head around the 1900s this was going on. It's just mind-blowing. Wow. So there you go. It's scary, scary, scary. Yeah, don't reply to marry me ads in newspapers. I think at least these days we have a lot more awareness about stranger danger and, you know, meeting in public places. They didn't have that in the 1900s. Thank you so much for keeping me company. And yeah, please do leave me comments down below. Where is Belle? Well, obviously she's not around anymore, but did she die in that fire? Did she not die in that fire? Is she responsible for all of the murders I talked about? Or all of the deaths that I talked about? Apart from the one where meat grinder fell on him. No, definitely that was definitely accidental. No, I don't buy it for a minute. I'm speechless. I'm just in awe that anyone has the capacity to do the gruesome acts that I've described, and for it to be a woman. How involved was Ray? We have so many questions. I don't like questions. I like neat little bows, but I do occasionally like to throw one or two in there that makes you go, hang on, where did she go? What did she do? Did she die? Did she not die? When they found, after the fire at the farm, they found a headless woman and 3 children. They didn't say that the children were decapitated, did they? So was it another murder victim who was picked out, like similar build and whatnot? Interesting. Anyway, I'm going to love and leave you because, you know, I think I've got your little brains going now. thank you so much for keeping me company. I really do appreciate it, and I'm glad to be back doing my true crime. And I shall see you in an upcoming episode. If you notice, I'm not saying weekly because, I'm hoping to do a few more. I'm a couple in front now, I'll admit that. So, I will release them as and when I feel like treating you guys to a true crime. As always, you guys, stay safe out there.